everybody. Gaming Grandpa here with part 3 of my Football Manager 24 MLS Explained tutorial. This is a new section. I didn't have this last year. I kind of parsed it in with some other episodes, but I wanted to give it its own episode. It's going to be called Allocation Money, Guaranteed Contract, and Roster Rules. All right. Now, I wanted to make sure you're aware there's a couple things that Football Manager does that just doesn't happen in real life. And there's quite a few things actually in the MLS. I mean, it is very confusing. However, I will tell you that when we get to it. Okay, so basically, allocation money, it's money that the league gives you in addition to the salary cap that the league pays for, or salary budget in this case. All right. Fake money, monopoly money, I've heard all the terms. It's useful. It's very useful if you know what you're doing and know how to use it. So hopefully after this episode, you'll have a better understanding of the allocation money. Now, one thing you need to be aware of. Each year at the start of the new season, approximately January 9th, usually is when the season rolls over, you're going to get a few emails pop into your inbox. One's going to tell you this is how much allocation money you're allotted this year for GAM and for TAM. And then you're going to get this little image right here that it's going to tell you how much money that they took away using to buy contracts. I don't know why Football Manager does this. It's very aggravating. I understand the premise of it. You know, like the top 3 people here, Roman, Berkey, Nielsen, and Reyna. This was from my Building Dynasty save last year. Okay. They spent $1.6 million out of their allocation money to buy down the cap impacts. Now, Nielsen and Berkey were both over the senior budget charge. All right, $651,000. They were getting over that. So I understand why Football Manager or Sports Interactive feels the need to do this, but here's the problem with it, and this is why it doesn't happen in real life, okay? You have until roster compliance date each year to get your roster and to get your money allocated properly, okay? Now, I traded Berkey. After I got this email, I didn't trade him. I sold him. He actually went to another team. So here's the problem. Out of all that money, half of that was spent on Berkey to buy a salary down. Well, I can't get that money back. It doesn't give it back to me. So it shouldn't be used until roster compliance date. And then it should be us who uses the money to buy it down. I don't agree with that, and that's wrong. I wish that they would fix it, but it's part of the game, so I have to include it because it's always in the game. All right, and see, that left me with $1.39 million, and it was just very frustrating. All right, now the next thing is it also says in line with last season's contract obligations, they bought down the following players using TAM. All right, Junior, Flores, Lara, basically any player that I use to buy down GAM during the season, which is what it's there for. I was getting penalized at the beginning of the next season for them same players by using TAM. And that's just ridiculous. And part of the problem, once again, I should be allowed to use that before March 4th. And if I don't use it then of course they should take it out. All right, Flores, I released him. Lara, I traded him to another MLS team. Alonso, I released him. Violante went to Borussia Dortmund. Anderson I kept. Escobar I traded. Robinson I traded. Ferdinand I waived. And then this dude I released. So only one of them players, 2 players stayed on my team. And so I didn't get that money back. That's why it should not be used until allocation or until the roster compliance date, which is March 4th, usually of every year. And it's very aggravating and very frustrating. And I wish to goodness they would fix this, because I've heard people that have gotten into save 7, 8 years into it, and they have 0 allocation money left to buy down salaries, and it's pointless. So they're double dipping is what it's doing. They're punishing you twice for the same thing, and I wish they would quit that. But it's in the game. Every year when the season rolls over, you're going to get this message, and it's frustrating, and there's not much you can do about it, but you need to be aware of it. Okay, targeted allocation money, or TAM. All right, in 2023, that's what we're in. The season at Football Manager and the MLS starts in 2023. It's $2,720,000 per club. Okay. Now, TAM has to be used for players that are intended to be making more than the league maximum salary when joining the MLS. I have another little thing I'll show you here in just a bit that is only Football Manager related. All right. In real life, that's what it's for. And in most of the Football Manager, that's what it's for. However, here's a good example of what it's used for is the designated player buy down. Once a year, you're allowed to use this. And a lot of people don't know it's there. All right. It's used to convert a designated player, a current designated player, to a senior contract. All right. But in order to do that, you've actually had to sign a player on a designated player contract, even though you're out of them. So this would make 4 designated player contracts. Okay. At the same time. And when that happens, once the player agrees to the contract, when it comes around where you could accept it, you're going to get this warning right here, this message. All right. And this happened to me, and I do it on purpose every year. Okay. That way I get an extra designated player. It basically just says that in order for Pass-Like to join, there's no slots available. You have to spend targeted allocation money to buy down a designated player contract. And it took Lowen's contract and made him a senior. Now, all of his clauses and stuff are still in effect. It's just it becomes a senior contract, which is good because I could have another DP now. And I will tell you now, it always takes the least amount of salary. So if you have one designated player that's making $2 million and the other ones are making $5 million, it's going to take the $2 million one each time. All right, it does do that correct, and I'm very happy about that. But just keep in mind, you're allowed to do this once a season. Now be careful, because if you use it towards the end of the season, say September for the future season, it's not going to take effect until January. So you have to actually use it when the guy's going to join the team. All right, so don't have him join in like next season is what I'm getting at. All right. It's also, TAM can also be used to sign a new player whose fees are more than the max salary budget charge, which Berkey, for example. All right. You can re-sign an existing player, Berkey, once again. All right. You can sign new homegrown players. Now, this doesn't happen in Football Manager, and I wish it would. All right. In real life, you're allowed. That's the good thing about the homegrown players initiative, is that their very first Major League Soccer contract in the academy teams, that doesn't count. All right. When you bring them to the big boy team, all right, you're allowed to pay their salary up to $200,000 out of TAM. So that is wonderful, but it doesn't really work in Football Manager. It does for Generation Adidas players, but it doesn't come out of TAM anyway. So it's just weird. I just threw it in there because I want you to know that there's a few flaws in Football Manager, and this is one of them. All right. Now, it can't be used on homegrown players that were previously signed to the MLS. Okay, so if you bring back a player from overseas that was homegrown, he's still going to be homegrown, but you can't use this for his salary. Now, a Football Manager thing is it can be used during contract negotiations to buy down their salary. I did this in my example this year in my Lost in the MLS tutorial, episode 2. You can see that. I used TAM to buy that young goalkeeper from Poland's contract down. All right. TAM, you cannot trade, and it does not carry over to the next year, unlike GAM. Okay, general allocation money. 2023, that's how much it is. Now, every year it's going to be increasing because the MLS is trying to do away with TAM. They're going to just have allocation money, and they're going to give you, eventually when TAM gets down to 0, your GAM's going to be pretty much what TAM and GAM was this year together, if that makes sense. Okay. Now, GAM is used to buy down player salaries. It's pretty much what it's used for. All right. Once again, you can use GAM or TAM in a contract negotiation, and I showed you an example of it. Now, GAM, you receive GAM not only at the beginning of the season, but your beginning of the season allotment is based off of the previous season's a bunch of things. All right. Failure to qualify for the MLS Cup, you automatically get more GAM than the other teams for that year, for the next year. I mean, anytime you transfer a player to another team outside the MLS, there's a chance you'll get some GAM. And you'll notice that in your transfers. It would say, hey, you got $500,000 added to your transfer budget, and then you got $35,000 in allocation funds. Okay. If you qualify for the Champions League, you'll get GAM. Designated player charge distribution. What that is if you have a new team coming in the league or a team that has never bought their third DP slot, when they pay for that, it's divvied up amongst the teams, and you'll get a little bit extra GAM. All right. In an expansion year only, expansion clubs receive separate amount of GAM for their inaugural season. It's like $1.5 million extra. Expansion dilution, basically, while they do that, they also try to be fair, and they give that $1.5 million divided by the rest of the team. So you might get 150, 200,000. All right. Any club during the expansion draft that loses a player, you're going to receive GAM for the loss of that player, depending on if they were a star player, DP, or whatever. It does vary. And GAM can be traded. Okay, guaranteed contracts. Basically, it's a contract that guarantees the player is going to get paid no matter what you do with him. If he get injured for the rest of the season and you put him on the season ending list, he will get paid. Other players get paid, but not their full contract. Think of it like buying disability insurance at work. All right, you have long term, you have short term. All right, guaranteed contract is pretty much long term, you get 100%. All right, now designated players and under 22 initiative players are always guaranteed. It doesn't matter what date it is, they're always guaranteed. Okay, now you can also add a clause in the senior or above contracts, which you can do it in the under 22, but it doesn't matter because they're guaranteed anyway. I wish they'd take it out of there. But for senior contracts, that's the only clause that you can add to the senior contract. You know, minimum fees, extra years, stuff like that. But you can't get bonuses and anything like that. But you can add the clause. All right. I don't know why you want to do that, because you're setting yourself up for failure if you decide to release that player. Then you're stuck with his salary because he's guaranteed. All right. Now, after the roster guarantee date, all contracts for your entire roster that you register become guaranteed. Okay, and I'm going to cover that in depth. I have the rules here, but I also typed them up and I'm going to go through them. Okay, to find the MLS rules, go to the competition, go to MLS and click rules, and then go down and look. You'll see it. It's important you look every year. I always look when I get my allocation money. That way I'm like, ooh, because the dates do change. All right, this year it's March 4th. Next year I think it's March 6th, so the dates do change. All right, roster compliance date. This is the date that you must register your squad for the upcoming MLS season. Now, that's not permanent. You can add players, you can take away players, you can move players to your B team, you can waive players. All right, but once again, if you waive players, there's a few rules that you have to pay attention to, and it says it within the rules if you find them. All right, if they have a guaranteed contract, they get paid regardless, unless another team picks them up when you waive them. Okay, if they're over 24 and they've been in the MLS for 1 year and you waive them, then it automatically adds to your cap unless another team picks them up. Okay, so just be careful about waiving players. I've always said that you really don't want to waive players. You want to get rid of the players while you can release them before this date, okay, because it doesn't hurt you, even DP players. Now, the roster guarantee date is July 1st, all right, this year. All MLS players will be considered to have a guaranteed contract for the rest of the season once this date hits. So if you're going to get rid of a player, do it before then. Otherwise, their contract, if they don't get picked up by another team, they're going to be sitting at home and you're going to be paying them. Okay. Once again, you can still add players if you have room, and you can move players around. You can sell. You can do whatever you want to do. Okay. Once again, pay attention to the rules when you waive players, because you could get hit with a salary cap hit. All right. Now, the roster freeze date, which pretty much locks your roster in. And the bad thing about this, throughout the season, once you register your team initially March 4th, and you have players that get hit with season-ending injuries, you can replace them. Once the roster freeze date hits, you can't. That's locked in, and the reason it's for the playoffs. Okay, there's no new additions to the roster. You can actually lose players, but you can't gain new ones. You can't replace injured players. So just remember that. Okay. That's for the playoffs. Pretty much is registration for the playoffs. And once that date hits, you cannot touch your roster. It's considered frozen. You can't sell players. You can't do anything until the season ends. And it's just for the playoffs. All right. But that's pretty much allocation money, guaranteed contracts, and roster rules. And I felt that it was very important to have its own section this year. So I know there's a lot of questions to all this. And by all means, ask them in the comments. I love replying. I love helping people in the MLS. And if this video helped you at all, please hit the like button. I'm trying to get the word out that, I'm doing this so people can kind of understand. And I have a favor to ask. If you vote negative, drop me a comment and explain why. All right, that just burns me up when people downgrade it or hit the thumbs down button and they don't tell me what happened. Did I misspell something? I mean, I make mistakes. I'm human. What was it that you didn't like? I mean, just let me know so I can fix it for more people. All right, and then subscribe if you want more videos. So until next time, guys, thanks for watching and have a good night.